Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the longest running show in the world about data. It's called DM Radio. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh here with the Data Vengers, bro. Come on, man. I've got the coolest people in data ever. I have to say, this Data Vengers thing, they have these Funko things or something they call
We
them. They're
do.
like little dolls that they've created for themselves. I mean, these folks are all in. And they do have superpowers, each one of them. So we'll talk about their superpowers. But of course, they always have a weakness. So I happen to know that scissors are Scott Taylor's weakness. So if you had kryptonite, no good. Scissors, yes. You can cause him all kinds of trouble. Yes, that's the data whisperer himself, Scott Taylor, on the show. We have Kate Strachnyi of DATAcated, who came up with the Data Vengers concept, which is absolutely
With
freaking
Scott
brilliant. Yeah,
together.
with Scott.
It's a
And
joint
George,
effort.
there you go. I like joint efforts. Sorry, just kidding. Joint efforts. Anyway, George Firican is here with us as well from LightsOnData. And we're all going to be at the Data Universe conference in just a week. It starts
Yes.
a week. It actually starts 6 days from now. It's not even a week.
Days from now. A week from now, it'll be half over.
Yeah, but remember, it's all the same day, man, right? Isn't that
It'll
the
be
deal?
all over. Yeah.
It's yeah, exactly. I'm deep into philosophy, and I saw a great meme the other day, and I posted on Facebook. I got it in an email. I'll talk about this in my speech, the death of journalism. I'll be speaking about that. It's really about AI meets data and how that's going to change the creation, the consumption, the delivery of news, of journalism, of information. Basically, it's going to change everything. But I saw a meme that showed a Chinese guy doing like with this little balancing act, and it said the person saying it can't be done should not disturb the person doing it. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I like
I've
that.
heard
So I
that somewhere
posted it.
before.
That's deep,
Yeah,
baby. Deep.
it
Deep.
is deep. So I had no idea where it came from. I just saw it as a meme. So I posted it and it got fact checked. It got fact checked and taken down by Facebook because it said there's no factual basis for this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like it's a proverb.
It's a
It's not,
joke.
I'm not
Really.
referring to an event.
Like
It's like a meme. Well, you know why? Because a certain person shared it. A certain person's name is Ivanka. And that person shared it. And like, there's no factual basis for this. And they took it down. They censored me on Facebook. I'm like, all right, that's it, people. This is war. When you start censoring memes, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
I gotta say that. But that'll be my talk, is the death of journalism. And Kate Strachnyi, I'll bring you in next. What are you talking about at Data Universe?
So a couple things, actually. I'm on two panels. I'm at a breakfast panel with Starburst. We've got someone from Women in Analytics there. We've got a lady from PepsiCo and Bank of America. And we're going to talk about data, believe it or not. Yeah, I know. How we need good data before we can do generative AI. We're going to talk about careers, and it's a woman in data breakfast panel. So if you want breakfast and you are not a woman, you're still welcome to join, and you'll hear some tidbits of advice and information. So that's day 2, Thursday, April 11th at 8 a.m. Don't know the location yet. I will figure that out. And then later that day, we are on a panel. So it's myself, Scott, Andrew Jones, and Kristen Kerr. We've got 4 data ventures on a panel where we actually know what we're talking about this time. We're going to talk about personal branding, content creation, some sort of data and AI trends, perhaps data careers, and advice on how to get things started. But aside from that, the Data Vengers actually have a booth for the first time ever. Super, super excited about that. We are joining forces with Deep Vibe and Data Vengers sort of together to have this shared booth adventure experience where you can meet the Data Vengers. You know, some people might want to, some people. I know, Eric, you have to stop by. We'll have interviews throughout the both days. We'll have giveaways. We'll have a spinner. We have lots of cool things planned, so don't miss that.
I feel like I'm the sort of real world media benefactor of the Data Vengers, right? I'm the guy you come to in the beginning of the movie and I give you some information about the mission. And then I'm like in the background, like, you know, sending emails or something. This is my fantasy for how I get
That's
involved
you.
with the
That
Data
is you.
Vengers.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
that's we're going to surprise you next week, but that is you. You're kind of our home base. You're like the,
Nice.
Charlie of Charlie's Angels. You'll be on the speaker.
That's who you never saw, right? Which is fine.
Right, you
don't
never
have to
saw
see
it,
me,
just
just
the
hear my
voice.
voice.
It's all about the
Right? You'll
voice
just
with
hear
you.
my voice.
Yes.
That's exactly right. Angels, we have a mission for you. Data Vengers, you need to solve the problem of the missing data, right? Something like that. Well, let's throw it over to Scott Taylor, the proverbial data whisperer, but he doesn't always whisper.
I do not. With
So will
spoiler
you?
alert, I don't do a lot of whispering. Anybody who's seen me knows I'm out there yelling, telling, and selling the power and value of data
Right.
management. I will be there with my Data Venture cohorts on the panel with Kate as well, talking about storytelling and the importance of storytelling in the data space. We are thrilled about the booth. Deep Vibe, if you don't know who Deep Vibe is, that's our content creation partner, our creative agency that we work with. They
Nice.
are personified by a wonderful film crew. I learned at Kate's knee that the real way to get some attention is always travel with a film crew.
At least 4.
At least 4. I think we'll have somewhere between 4 to 8. We're going to have a live stream show. Eric, we want to have you on there so we can turn the tables and finally ask you the questions. Throw it to you real quickly, see if you're ready. We're going to try all the tricks I learned from you right back at you.
There you go.
And we're going to have a ball for 2 days in New York, New York. The city's so nice, they had to name it twice. If I'd like to offer, if you'd like, we can do a contest right now. The first 5 people who DM any of us in LinkedIn will get a free ticket to Data Universe. Let's see what we get. Let's see how we pull. If you're in the New York area next week and you want to come to Data Universe, compliments of the DataVengers, we're happy to share a ticket with you. So let's see who responds.
Great value. Scott, you're also hosting a session. You forgot.
I'm also hosting a segment.
You can't forget that one, Scott.
I'm also hosting a segment where I get to introduce one of my true heroes in the data space. He's not officially a DataVenger, but one of the greatest data speakers. And, if you listen to me, I talk about how one of the worst things in the data space is how we talk about it. But this is a guy who just knows how to put it together, knows how to coin a phrase, knows how to share these notions in a way that they scale and resonate with folks. Doug Laney, the author of Infonomics, the actual definer of big data. If you know the 3 V's of big data, volume, velocity, variety, he came up with that.
That's right.
That stuck, didn't it?
Doug
So
is
in
deep.
this world of analytics, graph hub, fabric meshes, he is a clear beacon of clarity and hope for being able to share and articulate the value of data to those business users who never understand what we're talking about. So I'm introducing him and a few other folks. That'll be fun. I don't get enough time to do enough stuff, but I'll do my best to squeeze some fun out of the few seconds in between speakers on that day 1.
Nice. The analytics data hub mesh in the sky, right? In the cloud.
Yes.
Get some data mesh in the cloud. Well, last but not least, George Firican joins us, LightsOnData. George, thanks so much for coming here and bringing your wisdom and your
My pleasure, Eric. My
pleasure.
pleasure.
Tell us what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, Kate will talk about data. I'll be talking about the data about data. So I'll talk about the role of metadata in business governance and AI, and really how important it is. And I'm going to offer a lot of, use cases and real life examples of when this is not treated properly, what happens, and the other way around, best practices, as well as the tools that really helps manage it properly. The business glossary and why everybody needs to have one, the data dictionary, the data catalog, and sort of like what the differences are between all of these. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
That sounds really good. So the topic for today is black boxes and broken rules. And speaking of data catalogs and data governance, I think data governance is probably where the broken rules line comes in best, right? It's like, who wants their data to be governed? These days, it's become popular. I can tell you, we talked about data governance 15 years ago, and there was like almost no way to do it. You'd have some policy and hope that people read your policy and then hope they adhered to it. I mean, you could give access to a database at that granular level, or maybe on the front end, you could prevent them from getting access. But otherwise, it wasn't really possible. But that's all changed now, right, George? You really can have meaningful policies for data management that get baked into a marshaling area for access and allow you to do actual data governance now, right?
Definitely. So, tools definitely help, but I think in the end, it's all about the people. And a lot of this is quite a bit of a change that data governance is bringing in. And you need to manage that change properly. Otherwise, you're not going to have adoption on anything they're going to bring in, especially something where it feels like you want to govern and you want to control and all of these things. So as long as you have that transparency, that empowerment, that collaboration, and you can tie back to the business needs, I think you can get that buy-in to almost anything that you want to bring in. That in the end, it's supporting all of this.
Well, let's dive into that because data governance is a very hot topic for obvious reasons. I am pitching to one of my new close partners, Athena Solutions, run and founded by a real good friend of mine, Rick Sherman, who passed away last year. And I'm telling these folks, you know what? You're good at data governance. Let's put it in the context of AI,
Mm,
because AI is a huge driver right now. Every company of any significant size or stature is looking at AI, trying to figure out what are we going to do with this stuff? How can we do this stuff? And I would argue you need to get your data house in order before you
yeah,
pull the trigger on
yeah,
AI. Otherwise, you're you're going to be pissing in the wind, as they say. But what do you think about that, George?
absolutely agree. Yeah, Kate, go on.
No, I just wanted to say I'm a visual person, and no thanks,
That
Eric,
was
for
She's
that
just
one.
dealing with that imagery. That's
Go
all.
ahead, George. You
Dealing with
can.
that. She's
Sorry,
standing
it's a bit
upwind of
crude.
that imagery, hopefully.
So this because now, Kate, you've put that in my head as well, and I'm picturing it. It's definitely, striking.
You're
I remember
welcome.
in Venice, apparently a lot of people back in the days, in medieval days, they were, just drinking for the whole day and whole night, and then they would just go on the alleys and go at it everywhere. So the city was having a problem, so they put these like piss guards that would basically spray back onto you to derail people from doing that.
I think I'm done. I'm
I
gonna go.
guess I guess in a way data
I'm wondering
governance
if I
is
could
doing that,
interrupt
right?
and
It's
just
putting
talk
the
about data
guardrails.
for a moment. Is that possible? I hate to break this up here. You guys having such a great time
That's
in this
that,
pissing
but no,
match.
that's a guardrail. That's an actual guardrail that you're talking about, right? So
Oh, there you
Exactly.
go. He brought it back.
data
Back to data
governance.
I
governance.
missed that.
We need
Yes. Back to
guardrails, right?
yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you don't
Well,
have standards in your organization for your data, if you put bad data into AI, you get AS, artificial stupidity. This is the same conversation we've been having since the second data source was created in terms of integrating and aligning disparate sources out there and utilizing them across the enterprise. So
right.
now with AI and Gen AI and generative AI and all the different kinds of AIs that people talk about, now you can just do it at massive scale and put bad data everywhere if you want to. But it is basically, fundamentally, essentially the same construct of garbage in, garbage out. We all learned that on the first day of data. It's as sure as gravity. What goes in must come out. What goes up must come down. And those are and the idea that data governance is suddenly something that people are talking about. A bunch of us have been talking about it every day since that 15 years ago, 30 years ago, however long I go back pre 2K in this data space, and it's just the same story. So the ability to reinforce that and come up with new ways to talk about it, to have people realize the importance of it, is what all of us struggle to do every day in the content creation world of data. But it's the risks are much higher now because of the incredible and scalable value that AI can bring to an organization. So if you go wrong, you could go really, really, really wrong.
Well, yes, Scott,
Yeah.
the risks are higher, but so are the rewards, right? So I think Gen AI and generative AI, not that they're two separate things, but you listed them separately, so I will too. It makes it sound
It's
like
a duplicate.
there's more things going on. I think that has been
Duplicate.
a clear, yeah, duplicate, Kate. Now I'm thinking duplicated, datacated. Anyways, you're making me lose my train of my thought.
We're like squirrels.
Keep it
Yes,
going.
Like the squirrels.
I think the potential benefits that you can get from Gen AI and now Gen BI, which I'm seeing crawling into the space, is a huge driver for data governance, getting attention, data quality. People are finally realizing, oh, I really do need to get my data in order, because if I want to talk to my data, if I want to get insights and alerts in my email, and if I want them to be accurate, maybe we should have some governance around this data. Maybe we should clean it up. And I think it has been a really good driver for those things that we've been trying to accomplish for years.
I want to add just one more thing. I feel that data governance is really the conscience of ethical data and AI practices. I mean, it provides the principles, the policies, processes to really ensure that data is used responsibly. So like you said, Kate, Scott, both the stick and the carrot are so much greater now, that's why data governance is really becoming, or it's getting more attention. And that's music to my ears, of course.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
That's a great line. I really like that. That data governance is the conscience of the systems, right? Of your information systems, and wow. So I'm going to throw out my big curveball here, and we'll just maybe get a couple comments on it and pick it up in the next segment. But I think the most disruptive thing that's going to happen here, and it's happening already, is that AI, especially Gen AI, with its text generative ability. And of course, NLP is not new. Natural language processing is not new. It's been around for quite a while. But clearly, this whole generation of technologies is the next level of that particular domain. And what I think is going to happen is that some LLM, some Gen AI interface is going to be the ultimate interface for executives and businesses, and ultimately for managers and directors and other people to ask what's happening in their organization. Now, to get there and to be good at that, you're going to have to vectorize essentially tons of your corporate data. So I think there's going to be a bit of a land rush, if you will, of companies looking to choose their poison for LLM and then start curating data into their, probably the vector database. Yes, you can fine tune the model. I think it's best to put it in a vector database because you can then take it out a little bit easier. Once you've trained a model on something, it's hard to untrain it. That's why I use this analogy that training AI models is kind of like raising kids. You have to be very careful about what you expose them to because they will absorb everything. And then the wrong things will come reflecting back to you at the wrong time when you're like out on the ball or something and your kid says something crude. You're like, whoa, shh, don't say that. Don't tell that to grandma or something like that. We don't want that. But I think what's going to happen here is these interfaces are going to fundamentally change so much what we do. And then on the back end, let's think about this. We have spent so much time and effort over the past 20, 30 years moving data around, ETL, extract, transform, load, pulling data out of source systems, extract, transform, load. I think in the near future, you're more going to have like Kafka topics spinning out of these source systems like your ERP, your clickstream analysis, your CRM, your Salesforce, all these different systems, enterprise systems, these systems of record are going to be feeding directly into a vector database tied to an LLM, enabling executives to sit there and ask all kinds of questions about what's going on, which products are selling, which products aren't selling, who do I need to hire, who do I need to fire, what's happening that's good, what's happening that's bad. You'll be able to ask all these questions, and that is going to fundamentally change all the background activities for data. So ETL, I think, is in trouble, honestly. I mean, it's been in trouble for a while. ELT is the new way of doing things, but that is me throwing down the gauntlet to the DataVengers, and let's see what they come back after the break and see what their thoughts are, if they're going to shoot me down like kryptonite or if they're going to be with me on this journey to the new generation of information systems. We'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio.
It's on me.
All right, folks, back on DM Radio with George Firican and Kate Strachnyi and Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. All of them DataVengers. Are you kidding me? 3 DataVengers in one Zoom. If things start to go a little bit wonky, that's because there's a lot of power behind these DataVengers in their minds. But George, what do you think about my big idea about how everything is going to change?
There's definitely will be a big impact and quite a big shift. I think what we forget is still the challenge that will need us to get there. I think we will, but that data integration piece, we've been fighting with it for more than 20 years. I think since as soon as we had 2 systems with similar data, we've had issues with master data, with data integration. Those are definitely improving, but I think it's one of the biggest challenges that we're still fighting. And even, between humans, not even speaking about machines, for them to talk about the same language when they're both referring to the customer, to actually understand that you have the same understanding of the concept that the other person or the other tool, the other CRM machine, Gen AI is referring to, that it's actually the same. It's going to take us a little bit of time to probably get there. So I still think that human needs to be in the loop in some sort. But yes, probably you will be a little bit more reduced in terms of the workforce that needs to be involved to be able to answer all these questions to, the executives and other people using LLMs.
Yeah, I mean, I almost wonder, Scott Taylor, I'll throw it over to you. Is the vector database the new de facto data warehouse?
I don't know. I don't know the technical stuff. I don't know look under the hood, but I can tell you all that will work if the same thing I say every day, if that data is structured well enough underneath. So in your example of an executive speaking into some kind of interface saying, how are my products doing in this category in these 3 markets? If you don't have a standard, well-governed, expertly stewarded set of content about what a product is, what brand it belongs to, what category it's part of, what geographies it is distributed in, then that answer will be gibberish no matter what. And again, that is that problem isn't an LLM problem. That problem is a enterprise data problem that has existed, as George said, since the second system was created. And so those foundational elements and those issues and challenges and the importance of creating and maintaining and governing a standard in your organization for the most important data you have, which I would suggest starts with the data about your brands and the data about your relationships, you're not going to get there.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I mean, there are all sorts of relationships that need to be understood. I guess kind of where I'm going with this, and Kate, I'll throw it over to you, is think about all the manual effort required to stitch all these systems together, all the data movement that goes into a data warehouse, for example. There's a tremendous amount of effort. There are often problems. Fields get truncated, for example. They don't get mapped properly. No one notices right away. And so it's 3 months later that someone's like, where, what the hell happened to this report? That's all behind the scenes. And I just wonder to myself, is it going to be obviated by the manner in which these large language models choose information to share with you? I realize that you have to have accuracy. So the hallucination side is a very serious problem. There's no doubt about that. But when I think about how, like, for example, large language models don't care about outer joins and inner joins and all this other stuff. They just go grab stuff and give it to you. And it's kind of a black box right now as to how they do that. But what do you think about how disruptive that is in terms of the traditional, very organized way that we've moved data around to facilitate analysis?
That is very true. When you mentioned the left joins and right joins, you brought me back when I was in my consulting world, playing with actual data that made, helped big executives make big decisions. Okay. And I remember if you use the wrong join, your information will be completely terrible.
Right.
So that data in, that data out. But even if you have good data, but you don't join things properly or you don't filter things properly, the results could be disastrous. So I do think that things are going to change, and not sure exactly about vector databases, but I do know that we're going to have to find a way to not only use the structured data, but I think there's also a big push to gather all the unstructured data now, because we have LLMs that could make sense of that type of data as well.
Right.
And it is a risk, because you're right. When we're asking a question, like I've seen some really cool DataViz analytics tools where you could ask a question. I had someone on my DataCated show today where he's like, you can just ask a question. It's even plugged into Alexa, where you can wake up in the morning and say, Alexa, how are my sales today? And it'll just know that you're in this region and you're this director of this specific area, and it'll just give you a number. But exactly, it is a black box. So how do we know what is happening in there? And you hear all these people saying that AI is taking away the jobs of data engineers and data architects and data scientists. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I really don't think we're at the point yet where any of those jobs are going away. If anything, we need more people who can actually understand how this works, and to make sure that every time we ask a question in any format, that it actually does have the right joins in the back end. How we actually do that, only Scott knows, honestly.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that. Absolutely not. No, I don't touch anything. I don't get physical. I'm great at conceptual. I can talk my way through logical, but I do not get physical. I don't go behind the scenes.
Well, I'll throw it over to George to comment on then. George, I think these systems are getting better. I mean, one of the great comments I heard just yesterday, in fact, someone was talking about these large language models and AI, that they're changing so quickly, it's hard to master them, because if they change their model, all of a sudden, if you found a particular way of working with it, it's not going to work the same way again. But we have this problem. I mean, talk about old man. I'm gonna act like an old man now. On my Samsung phone, I got some OS upgrade or something. I'm like, fine, stupid upgrade. And I go to use my phone, and it's completely reorganized all my apps. And it's now in one screen. It's all alphabetical, this big long screen. I'm like, I had everything where I knew it was, and now it's not where I knew it was. Why would you do that? I mean, I get why the grocery store does that, because they want you to buy other stuff, right? They put the orange juice way in the back, so you got to go back to the whole store to get to the orange juice. I understand that. But in the data world, I mean, so my point is that these LLMs are getting much better at being able to cite where they got their information. Kindi, in fact, was acquired by Click. I saw a demo of those guys. It's fantastic, because you ask it a question, it gives you the answer, and then it shows you where it got the information. It's like, I got this sentence from that part, that sentence from this part. So now you can validate it and say, okay, no, it's actually here that I want and not that one. And these systems remember that stuff. I think there are many, many shoes left to drop. Usually it's the other shoe left to drop, and there's like a whole bunch of shoes are going to be dropping. But what do you think, just in terms of the disruption to the normal way that we've come to accustomed to working? I think it's just massive. But what do you think, George?
It's fascinating. I mean, it's kind of like reading back to like back in the 50s when the calculator was introduced and people were starting to use it. I mean, just like the notepad type calculator,
Yeah.
not even your personal computer.
60s, that would be the 60s, by the way.
That we said the 60s. Yeah, thank you. And and this is like so much exponentially higher than that. It's definitely is having a disruption that we're not even aware of, and will just keep on growing bigger and bigger. And I think for this point alone, we need some really good legislation around it at country level and then globally as well. And what I'm hoping is that actually the world is going to follow suit what the European Union put together in their approach to the AI legislation. And I'm hoping that's going to really serve this as this global benchmark for ethical and responsible use of AI and large language models and any sort of like AI applications. And I feel there are like 3-4 things that they're really great in. And one is they have this risk-based regulatory framework. So anywhere from like minimal to what was it, like an unacceptable risk? Minimal being something like, your email spam filters could be dictated by AI, but something unacceptable would be anything that's sort of a social score for the population that they deemed, no, that's not okay, that will never be used. So they have also this like ban on high risk applications like, the social scoring that I mentioned. They also have transparency obligations. And what I love, again, is they've emphasized the role of data governance and quality standards, that they need to be in there for AI systems to use and be based on these data sets that are stewarded.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think you're right. And we do need policies. Policies have to be easily understood. I will say I read something the other day about what our Congress was thinking about doing. I'll throw it over to Kate to comment on. I thought it was insane. They're like, oh, the government needs to put a cap on how much compute power you can leverage to train a model. I'm like,
Was that
what?
from an environmental perspective or why?
No, I think because it'll be so dangerous if they use one more node. No, it's like, what are you guys even talking about? Like, that is not even
Well,
remotely close to being like, close to something meaningful.
I do think that there is a need for regulations, and I know the regulations are coming, right? In some shape or form, they're already out there. I think we do need to be conscious. I think there might be something as too much where we place those sorts of limits that you just described, Eric. But I do think they are necessary. Unfortunately, I think most of them will come out after something really big and bad happens. And that's generally the driver, right? So in my old world of risk management, regulatory compliance, once a bank truly messes up, like in a big way, then all the regulations are like, okay, well, because of what happened over there, you all have to follow these rules now. Kind of like the shoes on the plane, right? Like we all have to take our shoes off because something big and bad happened. And otherwise,
one guy had a
ruined it for all of us. Now we all have dirty feet.
Who says one person can't make a difference? This guy changed the behavior for decades after that.
That's not, we should not laugh at that. But
If it's funny you should say that, though. I read an article that was absolutely brilliant by some British writer. I mean, the British press is fantastic. And the headline was, Satan doesn't wear sweaty socks. And his point was this idiot was so stupid. The reason he got caught was because his socks were sweaty and he was trying to use a match to light the fuse. So he's sitting there with sweaty socks.
The whole chain of execution has changed. George, one of our favorite stories about bad data, right, is the Citibank blow up in terms of regulations. It's
$400 million fine.
$400 million fine and a restriction on their acquisitions until they got their data governance and data management house in order. George and I were thrilled at this. No, diss on Citibank, but the idea that actually these words appeared in the complaint, you can look it up. It's great reading if you're out there trying to find, and prove to people the power and value of proper data governance. It was right in there. They didn't have metadata standards. They didn't have governance standards. And you can buy a lot of data catalog and software for $400 million. So, why risk it that way? And I was surprised too, because I always felt like, well, I guess not a lot of backup research. I always felt like the financial sector was one of the better ones in terms of managing data, because it's about money, finance and health, money and death. Those are things that are very high stakes versus, packaged goods. Did this product get there on time? Is it still fresh? That's kind of low stakes. But the issues are still there in these mega corporations with huge brands that still aren't focusing on the foundational stuff. When we get caught.
Well, I mean, part of the challenge is that you have incredibly complex information systems that very few people fully understand. You got a few consultants who come in, they understand how that stuff works. I think we are getting somewhere in terms of being able to do dynamic scanning of environments to find information systems. There's a lot of activity in that space, George. I see you nodding your head. That's really powerful stuff. Data discovery, usually metadata driven, finding personally identifiable information, flagging it so we can build a policy around that. We talked about that at the beginning of the show, that we now actually can define policies, and the compute power is strong enough and the sophistication is good enough that you can enforce some of this stuff. So we're really getting somewhere. What do you think, George?
Absolutely. And, I also want to add that maybe I'm hoping that the future of data is not just about bigger data sets and smarter algorithms and all these tools on how to do things better. But hopefully it's also about forging this future where data empowers humanity, and respects our privacy and it really amplifies our potential. And I know I sound like maybe too of an idealist right now, and I'm having my happy tea. Maybe that's
You're
why.
inspiring, George. I'm inspired
That's
Yeah,
called inspire.
yeah.
It's called inspiration. That's
by
right.
your optimism.
But we're definitely kind of stand at that crossroad of possibility and responsibility. And this is where we need to come in with our data governance practices and making sure that we have good quality data, and of course all the tools and the people and knowledge skills to be able to support all of this to achieve our, I guess, higher purposes.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I love it. The Data Avengers come to the rescue with principles and ideals. You got to have ideals. I mean, if you're an Avenger, come on, you got to be aspiring to something great, right? So you're aspiring to make the world a better place with data, and I'm all in on that. I remember years ago, I wrote an article, and our next break is coming up here in a second, but I wrote an article because I recognized that all this alternative data is being leveraged by financial services institutions, investment banks, where they have so much credit card exhaust data, they can tell you which company is going to meet or beat market expectations. And hello, like, how do you lose in that environment? Well, why can't we as consumers get access to that information too? I think that's an interesting regulation to say, if you're going to sell your exhaust data to some bank or some third party, you must also publish an anonymized version of it to a consumer facing, I call it a consumer facing data lake, basically, so we can all kind of tap into that. We'll pick that up at the break. We'll be right back. You're listening to DM Radio. All right, folks, back here on DM Radio with the Data Avengers, Kate Strachnyi, Scott Taylor, George Firican, all of them fearless. Firican? No, fearless. I think we're going to have to change your name to George Fearless, because fearless with data. We're just talking about consumer-facing data, and you were talking about, so I'll throw it over to you first, George. You were talking about leveling the playing fields and using data for good. So one of the ideas I'm going to share in my talk about the death of journalism is that the future of journalism is going to be data driven largely. And what you're going to do is you're going to slap large language models onto systems of record. So think like a sales tax system for your municipality, for your city, let's say, or even for Pennsylvania. But really, it's probably best for a city. They collect all the sales tax information, and from that you could learn which products are selling, which products aren't selling, where are products selling. That's interesting. So for a store owner, knowing which products to have in your store is a pretty big issue. And there are obviously some systems now that the chains can use that automatically reorder things and kind of pay attention to where the margin is. But I got to tell you, folks, like with inflation the way it is, pay attention to every price. I mean, we came back from a trip. We were in right outside the Cleveland airport. And I went to a gas station. My kid has trained me to buy her snacks in the gas station. So we went in to go buy her snacks. And we got 2 bags of chips, not big bags, not the smallest, but like, like pretty small bags of chips and 2 drinks. Anyone want to guess how much that cost? Two bags of
$40.
chips, 2 soft drinks, $15.
I was gonna
almost
guess
fainted.
12.
I
Okay.
was just like, $15. Wow. Like 3 years ago, that would have been like maybe $6, $7, like $1.75 for the drink and $1.50 for the chips or something.
Wow.
Point
Wow.
being, there are sneaky ways that various companies are ramping up the prices on these commodities that are wanted. So my point is, with an information service, I would love to, if I were a shop owner, I would tap into that and you could see, well, what are these products that everyone's making money in? Oh, Squishmallows. What the heck is a Squishmallow?
I
Ask
have
any
about 30.
9-year-old.
Eric, I have
What the heck is a squishmallow? Tell me.
these soft stuffed animals that are really squishy.
Oh, I
They're
think I
very
have one. I think I
squishy.
got one.
You have one
Swag
from that event where with
yeah, I have a
the Gartner.
squishmallow. Thank you. That's what it's called.
That's a
Sorry,
Squishmallow.
Eric. We're busy on this.
That's okay. That's okay. We're here to educate. We're here
I
to
haven't thought about
liberate.
consumer interaction with data, if you don't mind me sharing
Please,
it. Because I think,
please.
we're data professionals. We're in the space. We love data. Our initial feeling and we come at data from a positive perspective. And my belief is that most consumers, people who are, whether they're professional or not, but they're not in the data or technology space, think data is a negative thing. Do not look positively on the idea of data at all. Data is a scary thing. It makes mistakes. It puts you in situations that you can't get out of. It makes decisions that you don't understand. And I think there's a need for a consumer-facing narrative around the good that can come from data.
I think so too. And
Interesting.
here's a cautionary tale about data for good in a way, and and serving people. This was maybe 10, 15 years ago when the smartphones were kind of starting to pick up and being on the market. I think probably the first iPhone was released, and all the iPhone apps were starting to be part of the App Store. And I forgot what city it was, but they figured out they're spending, I don't know, over $200,000 a year just to have city workers go through the city and kind of identify potholes to see which ones they should be able to fix. And then they were fixing it. And they had a great idea. Why don't we start crowdsourcing all of this to our citizens? So
Yeah.
based on the location that they're in, right, they can just photograph it, send it to us through our app, and they're going to basically do the work for us. And it's going to be a lot more nimble on how we are able to act. And they did all of that. And, they've filled a lot of potholes. But what they found out afterwards is actually they started to serve the rich neighborhoods a lot more because they were the ones that were able to afford the smartphones and be able to submit this data. So I think in all of this, we always need to be cognizant of all the bias that goes into anything, and ideally to be able to put the guardrails and to address it before it creeps in and influences those results.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up because it reminds me of something important we should talk about, which is basically how to make sure that you are practicing responsible AI, right? We keep hearing about ethical AI, responsible AI. It's like, okay, a lot of people talk about it. How do you actually do that? I think there's one very simple rule. I'll throw it over to Kate, which is anytime you launch an AI project, articulate the purpose of the project. What is your objective? What are you trying to accomplish with this project? And then every 3 months, every 6 months, look and see, are we accomplishing this? Or the law of unintended consequences, which is, you just talked about it, George. It's everywhere. You're never going to think through everything. There's always going to be something you didn't expect. So always go back and just check and just make sure and have some data around it, have some metrics around it. What are you trying to accomplish? Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also makes sense to change direction if you feel like that the business has changed direction or the need has changed. Don't just stick to a project just because you've invested 6 months of
Right.
time and resources into something. You're like, oh no, we're going to keep doing it because we've invested so much. No, sometimes you just have to call it quits because that's not what the mission is. So I think step one is aligning, like you said, what is the actual need and making sure that it is a real business need. You're either making money or you're saving money or you're saving lives or doing something that has an actual impact. You're not doing it just because you can do it. And, talking about responsible AI, I think I read a statistic somewhere that every time you ask ChatGPT a question, it's like spilling a one plastic water bottle on the floor or something, which sounds wasteful. I still ask the questions, unfortunately. So Scott, don't roll your
That's
eyes.
funny.
You
I'm
do
just
it
trying
too.
to understand the equivalency of what that is, that unit of measure. Is that
It's
you're spilling? Is that an energy
It is
thing?
waste.
Is that a
yes,
Yeah,
it's
waste
an energy
thing?
thing. Yeah. because of the energy that it takes for ChatGPT to run its thing.
Right.
I don't know how it actually works. It's a black box, Scott. We don't know how it works.
Yes,
so-
that's right.
Yeah, I brought a black box here. In case you want.
There
There
it
it is.
is.
That's the black box, folks.
That's
You've
the
heard so much
LLM.
about it.
Open it. Oh, you can just open the black box.
I
That's
know. That's
phenomenal.
what people don't realize about black boxes. Just open them up.
Just
That's it. Have
Take a peek.
truth in the black box. That's what you want to have.
Oh, wow. That's pretty
Like
cool.
that.
I came up with
Yeah.
an idea a few years ago in New Orleans for a big conference. What is the square root of truth? Ooh, think about that for a while. I drew a little thing and truth inside. It's like, makes you think, right?
But what
Yeah,
about
George,
truth
what is it?
squared?
Truth squared is like, I mean, it's like exponentially better than the regular truth, right?
I think so. There we go. He's got the hat on. That's it. That means we're in
Oh,
business.
you want and you want to
Oh,
avoid truth
I
decay.
don't know. See, in
But Eric,
America, because of, go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to go back to what you were talking about earlier about owning our data, because I think that's actually so important, right? I wish I could see my own data. I don't care about the anonymized data. I don't care about what we're doing as a population. I mean, I care to an extent, but there's not much I can do about that. I want access to my own data. I want the AI to tell me, Kate, you spent too much on Amazon this month. You've got to stop. Tell your kids to stop ordering Squishmallows. Like some sort of alerts that help me in my
Yes.
personal life. Or like you haven't ran in a month. You used to run. What happened to that? Go get your shoes on. Some sort of personal help that we can actually get because we have the data. We know we have it. Our phone tracks literally everything. I mean, I've turned a lot of those apps off that track your steps and your location, but it knows where you are, it knows what you're doing. And I think it could be used for good. But unfortunately, all it's doing is collecting the information and it's being used most of the time to sell us things.
Right.
And I just wish we owned a bit of that ourselves.
I think that's an awesome idea, and I've actually evangelized the concept of owning your algorithm, like understanding your own
Mhm.
feed. So Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and all these companies, they understand your behavior, and I'm sure what they do is they identify cohorts. Now, okay, we'll market this to that cohort, this to that cohort, et cetera. But they own it. That's the point. They own the feed. You don't own that feed, and you can say, "Oh, I want to know all the data that you have about me." First of all, good luck with that one. I'd be curious to see what the processes look like on the client side to figure that out. But to own the feed and to understand why am I getting all this information? Because in the new dynamically generated world of news and journalism that's coming, you want to be able to choose what you see. I'll make an analogy to a car crash. I once unfortunately witnessed a fatal car crash. I was the first person to drive up, and it was just awful. It was an awful experience. And I hope to never even hear about a car crash, let alone see one. It's just a horrible, terrible thing. And in the future, I'll be able to do that because I'll just say, nope, I don't want that in my feed. I want other stuff in my feed. And you'll be able to control that and go back and change it. So I do think we're entering a very interesting world that's coming down the pike pretty fast. And folks, you can see all these data vengers at the Data Universe Conference in New York, Javits Center, next week, Wednesday and Thursday, April 10th and 11th. The podcast bonus segment is coming up next. And wow, Kate Strachnyi, George Firican, Scott Taylor, and of course, yours truly, all at Data Universe next week. Just Google Data Universe. We'll be right back with the podcast bonus. All right, folks, back on DM Radio, talking to the Data Avengers. This is so cool. I feel like a kid. I'm meeting my heroes. The Data Avengers are here. It's like, yay, sign my baseball. This is going to be awesome. Kate Strachnyi, you came up with the Data Avengers, and that's not scary at all. But her name in Russian means scary, which is kind of scary, but it's not because she's so nice. And Kate, so tell us the origin story for the Data Avengers.
Yeah, so I'll start. It wasn't just my idea. It was definitely a group effort, and you've got 3 of the Data Vengers here. There are about 10 to 12 of us. It's sort of a running list. We are sometimes Data Vengers and sometimes we are not. We take on the role when duty calls. But what happened was last September, so September 2023, we all happened to gather and unite in Big Data London. And it was about 2 months before the actual event where we realized, like, hey, 10 of us are actually going to be on site together. We should do something. And we did call ourselves the Data Avengers before.
We did before that, yeah.
It was, yeah, we were doing some data quality work. We were doing courses, and we're like, I don't actually remember how the name Data Avengers came to be. Scott might have more
I don't
recollection.
need, but just sort of organically, the emotional spark was we became friends online,
Yeah.
And for me, at least, part of the origin story was we started defending each other against trolls. So early on, we all did it. Once you get a certain profile on LinkedIn, you get enough folks paying attention to you. There's always somebody who thinks what you're saying is stupid or wrong or shouldn't be. And
Right.
biggest complaint I used to get early on was, it's a lot more complicated than that. And I would turn that around and go, yeah, well, that's your problem. I'm trying to simplify this space. But we did start to help
That
each
wasn't
other
hostile at
out.
all.
When somebody would attack one of us, the rest of us would jump on that comment stream. And that started to build in terms of the group. I credit Kate absolutely for formalizing to a great extent the community aspect of it, because nobody pulls people together on LinkedIn and socially better than Kate does. And she was kind of like, okay, here's a list of folks. And then we came up with this sort of branding. And then the Big Data London effort was really the first time we took a step to commercialize this activity and go outreach to brands and provide what we thought and still do believe is a unique value proposition for content creation in the data space, which is sort of a predefined network. We come together. There's 7 to 10 of us, however many they are. We all have our own voices. We all have really strong personal brands, and we all really like hanging out and working with each other. And that comes across in basically every kind of interaction. And brands have responded to that. As creators, they come to us individually, but we said, look, we can, if you get 7 or 10 of us together, it multiplies the effect out in terms of amplification and creativity. But
You get
beyond
what
what
the
you can do as a
Germans-
single brand to try and pull people together is kind of the approach.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What the Germans call Gestalt, right?
Gestalt,
Das
yes,
ist
we wanna
German,
get
are good
into
Gestalt.
engineers.
Yes.
They're very hardworking. Yeah, George, I'll throw it over to you to comment on your thoughts of the Data Avengers and what is your special power?
Oh, it's such an honor to be part of this group, and like both of them mentioned, we've known each other for quite some time, and we have this mutual admiration and respect. And I think we not only learn from each other, but we love to we love when the other is successful, and I think that's very unique in a way maybe to this group. And you don't see that very often. There's a lot of maybe, let's say, jealousy and things that are happening maybe between others that we've noticed, but yeah, all by admiration and respect for this group. And my superpower, I don't know, yeah, you're putting me on the spot, but maybe it's to try and connect a cafe latte, to something that has to do with data. And I've been doing this for 60 times already, and I don't know if I still have it in me to carry on.
Nobody
Wait,
does
is
it
it
better than
lights
you.
on data or lattes on data, George? You got to pick
It's
one.
right, it's lights
That's
on
it.
data.
Lights on data.
Okay, superpower is to put the lights on data in a
That's
meaningful
it.
and
Your
fun, engaging
superpower
way.
is
There you
Yeah,
go.
there you go. We knew we'd
Yes.
get there.
So you
See.
expose dark data is what you do. You expose
Mhm.
dark data.
I do
I like
actually have
that.
a session on dark data. Yeah.
So I mean, it was just, what can I say, man? My superpowers that I've gleaned from talking to the Data Avengers are coming through. So superpowers, Scott and Kate, I'm going to ask both of you. Scott first, what's your superpower?
I would have to say storytelling. I've been in storytelling since it was 2 words, and thought you'd appreciate that.
That's
The
a good
need,
one.
especially in the data space, to convey the value of what we're trying to do to the business side, to the folks who have all the money you need to do data, but none of the time to listen to what you're going to talk about. You got to break through there. And if you want to be successful as a data leader, you better get good at storytelling. And I'm not just
Yeah.
talking about data storytelling where you're putting analytics in a business context to drive some sort of action. How does this graph look and what's this little? I'm talking about sitting with your CEO who doesn't even know why you're in the office and needing to explain to them why the work you are doing is important while you're competing with other better storytellers in your organization, like the head of sales and the head of marketing, who tell stories for a living. So I think storytelling is probably one of my strongest suits.
That's great. So George shines light on dark data and exposes dark data. Scott can convey. Well, amid all the noise and all the din, Scott will convey the message. But last but not least, Kate Strachnyi, what is your superpower?
Yeah, thanks. I think from a data perspective, I do come from a data visualization, sort of visual best practices, knowing what good looks like, proper use of color. I've got a book out color-wise on that topic because I think it's super important. But I think in a broader sense, I think my superpower would be to put out creative content to cut through the noise on social media that can help explain complex topics or bring the right people to the right thing, so to speak. So if you care about data architecture, I want to be able to help you find the right webinar or white paper that can help you, and connecting those tech software vendors with buyers and doing it in a very fun way that's fun, not just for everybody else, but also for me. So building sandcastles to explain the importance of a data infrastructure, or I've made a shrimp pasta with Data Galaxy to talk about data governance. I had a coffee show with IBM to talk about data observability. So sort of breaking out of the norm, like what we're doing right now is super fun. And I think there is definitely a space for it, but I want to take things outside of the let's just chat to actually doing something while trying to explain data concepts.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic. So all of you are fantastic. The Data Avengers might be the coolest idea I've come across in the data world in many years in this
I
space.
agree.
So thank
We
you
are
for
quoting you on
bringing-
that. That's going on our website.
That's okay. I'm happy to do it. It's just brilliant. I mean, it's very clever and it's fun. It personalizes, it humanizes, and it Avengerizes. Maybe that's even a word. So, folks, don't miss out. And you heard Scott Taylor DM one of us. We can get you free tickets. Someone actually DM me. I said this on the last show, and someone DM me, and I gave him a free ticket. So we really do give you tickets. Got to send us a DM. Look these folks up online. Scott Taylor, George Firican, Kate Strachnyi. До свидания. We'll talk to you next
До
time. Maybe let's get
свидания.
the DM ready. Bye-bye.
Always a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.